Hey, welcome back to Mind, Body, Soul Evolution. And I'm going to be telling this story, as promised, of the third angelic visitation that I experienced this lifetime. And I thank you for joining me and for listening to my recounting of the story. And before I go into it, I'd like to, as usual, I'd like to take a couple deep breaths, deep, slow, steady breaths to recenter and make sure I'm aligned divinely and with through my heart with a capital H, and um, and then I'll go into the story. So I welcome you to join me in taking a couple of nice, slow, steady, deep breaths all the way into the hara, into the belly, nice deep belly breaths. Okay, slow and steady. Let's do three, and you can join me or not if you don't like to, but I welcome you to join me. And so let's take these deep breaths all the way down to the belly, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And nice. Okay. So to recount this third angelic visitation, it requires that I get into some vulnerable spaces. And it's not easy. But again, I thank you for being here. I thank you for listening and for your support, your support and your love. Look. This is what I even have this to be with me as I'm telling the story. It's you see it? It's Archangel Michael. Yeah, protect us. Anyway, so it was June of 2016, and well, you know how many of us light workers are incarnated into very challenging situations, family dynamics, dysfunctional, traumatic settings that is intended really for many, many, many things. But yes, it is all ultimately going to help refine you into and fine tune you into becoming the glorious, divine, beautiful, strong being that you ultimately are anyway. But going back to, my story, you need to know that yes, this was June 2016, and on June 20th, Monday, it was a Monday, I remember, I ended up I found myself driving in a frantic panic to a courthouse down the road from where I lived at the time to try to obtain PFA, what is called the Protection from Abuse in the state of Pennsylvania, against my now ex-husband. And yeah, and that's where the story begins. And this particular Monday, I drove down to the court and I explained my situation and what was happening. And I obtained the emergency PFA that they initially give you an emergency, at least in Pennsylvania, they give you an emergency 24-hour PFA, protection from abuse, in which, in this case, the sheriff came over and effectively evicted him out of the house and explained to him that he was not to come back, not to contact, not to call, not to in any way, shape, or form, and to just report back to court at the designated time the following day to hear, the circumstances once more for the judge to preside over whether it should be extended or not. And then at that time they grant a 3-day extension, which I got because um, the first emergency PFA I filed and I got it, and the next morning, he started texting me, blowing up my text on my phone, saying that he was coming over. And I said, "No, you're not. There's a PFA against you, and it's court ordered, and I do not feel safe around you. There's a reason why I had to do this, and you cannot come by. I will call the police." Long story short, I went back in and they extended it for 3 days. And I was supposed to, within those 3 days, they scheduled another hearing to hear at that time whether it should be extended again or not, that sort of thing. Now, if you've never lived through this sort of situation, it's, I was living in that house. I sent the kids away. I had 3 sons. I have 3 sons that I told them to go spend time at my parents' house during this time. And my 2 stepchildren, whom, I was a stepmother to I helped raise them for 6 years. And that was one of the toughest things to decide to take the step to hit the big pause button and say, no, this is not going to continue to happen anymore. But there's a lot that goes into that. And one of the things was I knew that they would be effectively cut out of my life. My 2 stepchildren, whom I had grown quite fond of, I loved very much, and I had done my best to be a good stepmother for 6 years, raised them, and that was one of the hardest things I knew would happen, and it has, I as soon as from the first day, June 20th, 2016, that I filed the original emergency PFA, he cut off contact and has forbidden them from contacting me. And, it's just how it goes, is how these things go. So I knew that would be one of the results. And one of the more difficult aspects of the decision. It was quite heartbreaking, in fact. But that's okay. The connection is never broken, okay? Because even though their heads have been filled with all kinds of things about me since I filed the PFA, and the communication was cut off, the connection is never lost. And the connection in the heart, they're always in my heart. My 2 stepchildren, whom I was a stepmother to as lovingly as I could for 6 years, they are very much in my heart, always. Have love for you guys. Anyway, I knew that would be the result of my choosing to take this action. And in the subsequent 3 days, because the next day they extended it, the judge extended it for another 3 days. And living in that house that had been my home for years suddenly felt foreign, suddenly felt scary as shit, because it was like, if you've never gone through that experience, it's like you feel like a fucking sitting target, because well, he knows where you live. And, even though this went through a court uh, judicial process, and the judge ruled for me and approved the PFA, and it got stamped with the official stamps, and it got filed in the official file room, courtroom. That doesn't, what's to stop him from coming in the middle of the night and, doing whatever. So, of course, living under those conditions, it's very stressful, very, very scary. It's an awful situation, and I don't wish it on anyone. And yeah, it's like living in battlefield under battle zone conditions. So never knowing what to expect, like you may get attacked at any moment. Anyhow, but that's kind of how the marriage had been anyway. That's kind of how things had been anyway, obviously, if I'm filing a PFA. Okay, so let me paint a picture for you, because it was Thursday morning, June 23rd of 2016. Now, as I said, I had filed an emergency PFA on that Monday. 24 hours, went back into court. They extended it for 3 days, and they assigned the follow-up court hearing for that Thursday. And I think it was at 10 a.m. and in Allentown, Pennsylvania, at the courthouse. And yeah, let me paint a picture for you so you understand. I was laying in bed. I had a broken left foot, because during one of our last scuffles, look, I'm just going to be fully transparent and just tell you everything, because like I said, I'm being asked to share these things for a reason, and I'm doing my best to rise up to the occasion and what I'm being called and asked to do, and sharing. I'm just a messenger. I'm just sharing with you how these things are in fact true. A lot of us light workers have frequently found ourselves incarnated into these highly challenging situations that imprinted us with these false programmings, and that you then carry out and perpetuate through your adult life, until you at some point, hopefully before before you die, at some point you say, whoa, 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 what's wrong with this picture? Why have I been allowing this to go on and on? Why have I been participating in this reality? Screw this, anyway. So, and that was my point, basically, at this time that I had gotten to. I said enough is, and I knew what it meant, and I was scared shitless. I didn't really have a full plan, and but timing is such that the situation had become so dire, because the way it works with abusive narcissists is that when you first get into a relationship, if you're like a light worker and you like to help people, but you're going to attract narcissists, as you well, I'm sure you're well aware. And so it's easy for uh, beings uh, of the light, like light beings, it's easy to get sucked into this, you know narcissistic, um, codependent, sick, toxic, convoluted, cyclical, violent, abusive relationship and patterns, if you have grown up and you were born into a highly dysfunctional family, that you experienced a ton of childhood trauma. And this is just kind of one of those things that happens to some of us. And so this Thursday morning, I was laying in bed. I had not slept all night. I had been scared shitless, not knowing what to expect at any moment, if he would try to come into the house and do something. And to top it all off, his ex-wife, the mother of their two children and my two stepkids, we had a very toxic, the whole situation, the whole entanglement was very toxic, but she hated my guts. Okay. For years, she felt very threatened by me in so many ways, and she hated my guts. And she even actually, during those 3 days, took to coming and like, this is the awkward part of the story, is that her mother lived next door to us. How delightful, right? Okay, look at this interesting like hell I created for myself here. Yeah, okay, so anyway, she took to coming and hanging out next door at her mother's house during those 3 days because she knew that I had filed a PFA against her ex-husband, the father of her children, and she had been dying for an opportunity to come up to get rid of me. She hated my guts, and so she came and hung out for days next door, and sometimes with her brother, who was a police officer, by the way, and the two of them over the fence making snide comments, mocking me, putting me down, laughing at me for having filed the PFA. Making, just comments over the fence, and like, as I'm trying to live my life, as I'm trying to do gardening, take care of the, trying to live and try to survive through these conditions, this situation until the next court date, and interestingly enough, by the way, when I before I came into the picture, the two of them, she had filed a PFA against him, but I didn't know that at first for a while. Later on, when I came into the picture and started a relationship with him, I didn't know that for a while. And when it did come out, she sent me emails saying that, even though, because he said, he would tell me, hey, she dropped the charges because she was lying, and this was earlier on in my relationship with him, when I discovered this, and he told me, yeah, she was lying. That's why she dropped. You see, she dropped the charges after a while. It's because she realized she was doing the wrong thing because she was lying, and she was sending me emails telling me that she did drop the charges, but that he was abusive, he was horrible, this and that and that. But then at the same time, she was also sending me emails, telling me that I was a horrible person and calling me names and insulting me and stuff like that. So I thought she was just a total nutball, and I chose to believe everything he said and not a word of what she said. And because you want to believe what you want to believe when you want to not deal with reality, right? So, um, and so she had been hanging out next door at her mother's house in the backyard, mocking me with her brother. And I mean, even saying some things, some crazy shit. Like her brother was saying, hey, we're good people over here. We are good people over here with guns. Good people with guns. Like making comments like that over the fence to me, and making comments to me, laughing about that, like I said, filing for having filed the PFA. Um, And I had also, had to, find a place, tell my sons to get out of the house, go stay with my parents for a while this was going on. I had, I was laying there in bed, and I had received messages from him, even though he wasn't supposed to contact me, telling me that he had hired an expensive lawyer and that my ass was grass for having done this to him. I didn't have an attorney. I didn't have money. I didn't have health insurance. Oh, see, see. 3 weeks before this happened, I had quit my job, my paying job, because I was set to begin to be going that week. Actually, that exact week, I was supposed to be going to Institute for Teach for America. If you don't know who the organization Teach for America, if you don't know who they are, what they are, it's kind of like the Peace Corps, but for people who are wanting to be teachers, or for teachers, or to have a teaching experience. And basically, I had been jumping through hoops and interviews and multiple tests and certification tests for like a year. I had been going through all of this with them to be accepted, and I had been accepted. And this is amazing, actually. If you check that out, because I mean, like, they have over 50,000, 50,000 people apply annually to participate in Teach for America, and they only accept like 4,000 or 5,000 a year. So it's kind of a big deal, like. And I had, like I said, jumped through hoops for a whole year while I was working full time, going through these interviews and testings and certifications and all these things, qualifications with them, and I had passed everything with flying colors, and I had been given an offer and accepted. And I was going to, but first, before the school year started and you got placed into, in my case, in the greater Philadelphia area and in a high needs district, in my case, like I said, I ended up teaching Spanish at a high school. Um, yeah, that was an incredible experience, by the way. So if you ever are interested in something like that, check it out, Teach for America, because they put you in a high needs district, you teach, and you get a teacher's salary, while at the same time you're concurrently attending master's level education courses at a university. And again, in my case, it was UPenn, which, the grad school, the education grad school at UPenn is phenomenal, top notch. I mean, it's an Ivy League school, and I believe it's like the grad level educational program there is pretty innovative, cutting edge, and for educators. And I believe it comes in at like one of the top 10, like 6 or 7 place of educational master's level educational programs in the US. So anyway, it's a good program. Okay, it's a really good program, and I was set to go there. But first, you have to attend Summer Institute, a summer teaching experience, while teaching, ongoing teaching certification classes. And it was a 7-week unpaid, uh, mandatory summer institute that would take place for me at Temple University in Philadelphia, before I could start my placement of the school year in September, at the beginning of September, at that high school as a teacher. So I had quit my paying job 3 weeks earlier, and here I was with laying in bed, having been living like a scared refugee, like a sitting duck, feeling like a target, like at any moment he could come and try to do something or whatever, and listening to the mockeries of the ex that hated my guts, and her brother, who's a questionable cop, and all these other things. And I'm I'm laying in bed with the broken foot, swollen, no money coming in. He had cut the finances off, of course, as soon as I filed the PFA, because he had been unemployed, but had just gotten a job at that point, had just gotten hired. But he, of course, didn't offer me the health insurance, even though I stated during the court hearing that my foot was broken during one of the tumbles with him, like during one of the arguments. And yeah, like on full transparency, his explosions, the previous the 2 weeks leading up to my filing the PFA, the protection from abuse, his emotional explosions that became violent, and sometimes often physically, were becoming so frequent and so intense that he was having them, no joke, like 5, 6, 7, 8 times a day by that point. And I had, for the past 2 years, I had dragged him. I had tried so many things because, like I said, it was my third marriage. My third marriage. I did not want this to fit. There were kids involved. I wanted to somehow make it work. I dragged him to MBSR, mindfulness based stress reduction classes. I dragged him to anger management classes, support groups for people with anger management issues, for relatives of people with anger issues. I took him to individual therapy sessions, couples therapy sessions that I tried to set up. And each time, of course, he was not interested in healing, but I didn't, it took me a long time to get this through my thick skull that at the time that you cannot force anyone to heal. You cannot force anyone to choose to heal. So all these things, all these attempts and all these things I was doing, he wasn't having any of them. In fact, he would like go to one of them and be like, I'm not going back to that circle of freaking freaks. Oh, no, that I don't like that counselor. I'm not going back to those therapy sessions. Oh, that class. Yeah, that mindfulness stuff sounds interesting, but it's just not my cup of tea. Going for walks. Okay, well, man, I kind of like that. But I don't know. It just, I I tried so many different things, so many approaches, and here I was trying to force him to do something he wasn't ready to do, but I was getting the benefit of all these things that I was completing. He went to one class, one mindfulness class, and then dropped out. I kept going. I got the benefits of all these. I kept going to individual therapy. I kept going to the support groups, different things. So I was healing and I was trying to force it on him, and that just wasn't going to work, of course. But it took me a while to get that. And that right now, I mean, I'm light years away from that sort of thinking and that mentality now. I've experienced earth-shaking awakenings since then, even though I've experienced awakenings throughout this whole entire lifetime, like mild and huge, and all this stuff. But I have experienced several incredibly amazing ones, and ongoing unfoldment since then. And I'm a very different person. I see this very differently now. And I understand. And it's actually a very intimately important to me. Part of my mission is that to understand that I'm not here to rescue or save anyone. No, no, no. I cannot force others to choose a path of self-healing, a path of creating a life of love and joy rather than setting yourself up for disaster, right? And I've lived that. I've learned that, and that is in part the purpose of going through, light workers going through these sorts of dysfunctional patterns, traumatic experiences throughout childhood, and then needing to learn to break through these dysfunctional patterns and negative programming that has been instilled in you since childhood in these dysfunctional situations. And that's part of the journey is breaking through, rising above, and breaking through to an empowered version of yourself, to bring in and embody an empowered version of yourself that understands these concepts. Okay, so anyway, at the time I was in a different place, even though it's 2016. It doesn't sound all that far, but yeah, I've yeah. So I'm laying in bed. I have a broken, swollen left foot, and I'm facing. I didn't know what to do. Like I said, no health insurance. Couldn't afford to go to a doctor. Couldn't afford to get a lawyer for court that was coming up in like an hour. I hadn't slept all night. I had been paranoid in my own home that didn't feel like my home anymore. I like I said, was facing having to deal with this, and I was being asked to go away to the 7 week, because you went there to institute at Temple University for the 7 weeks, and you stayed there overnight. They give you a room and everything. You live there for the 7 weeks. So and I've got all this going on, and I don't know how I'm going to do that with my broken foot, no money, no health insurance, you know. And I just, I just wanted to, I wanted to lay there and never move again until I just turned to dust or something. I don't know. I just didn't want to move again. I didn't want to do anything. I wanted to give up. And right at that moment, right at that moment that I had that thought that I just wanted to never move again, come what may, I just didn't want to do anything anymore. And right as I had that thought, I was laying in bed on my side, and all of a sudden, at the foot of the bed, to the left, he appeared. This was Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael. If you've seen the other two videos of the first and second Angelic Visitations, he was the one who came to visit me the first visitation, and if you saw that one, you saw I explained that he actually temporarily borrowed a human vessel to come and talk to me in the 3D. And uh, you know, in this case, in this situation, and then that was 2007. It was October. He came, and like I said, temporarily borrowed this human vessel. Then Archangel Gabriel came a month later in a dream to talk to me. But here, in this case, I was laying in bed, and I was deciding to give up, deciding I'd had enough of all the everything, and he was appearing as his luminous self this time, not in a vessel, in a human vessel, and I think I've tried to explain this in one of those other videos that I just referred to. But if you've never had this experience, basically his energetic vibratory field, just being in it, is just being in its presence. It's hard to put into words. It's undeniable. It's like Michael feels like fierce love. Fierce, true love. That's Michael. Yeah. And I did try to explain it in another video, but basically, he is kind of made up of, like, he looks like he's made up of, in his luminous self, of billions of lights, of billions of colors. And I mean, I can't even explain, because a lot of these colors aren't even colors that exist in this material realm, in this reality. But when you're further away, he overall looks blue. Yeah, Michael is blue to me. That's how I perceive him. And I know that in a lot of the esoteric wisdom and texts, he is referred to as blue. So, but yes, I can confirm that to me he appeared blue. Okay, I can confirm this. Yes. So basically, and he's tall. It was, I mean, like something like 7 feet tall. I'm not entirely sure, but it was tall. And the moment he appeared, once again, and you feel these waves of pure, fierce love, deep, true blue love, and just coming through you. And I was speechless, once again, and I didn't know what to say. I was just watching, and he moved. He seemed to be walking but floating also, and it was just a couple feet to the bed, and he sat down on the edge of the bed next to me, like where next to how I was laying on my side. And even though he was made of lights, he was like all completely at the like made of all these lights that were spinning and swirling and then all these things. When he sat on the side of the bed, it created an indentation. It created the there was some kind of mass. There was something there. Okay. And that I remember looking at it and like, wow, because you could see through him to it, to the bed kind of, it's hard to explain. And then he proceeded to tell me, he said, oh, and I should clarify that again, like in the other videos, the conversation was, again, you could characterize it as telepathic because there were not words exchanged, although we were talking, we were communicating, and he would send me a thought form, and immediately, I would hear it, and I would respond with another thought form, and he would hear it, like sending, back and forth. And he said, "You have nothing to fear." He said, "You walk into court with the truth, and you will be victorious. You have nothing to fear." And, oh, and I had taken to the last few times that he, in the past two weeks, actually the past few months, every now and then I had taken to starting to record my ex-husband during his outbursts and explosions with my phone. And I still have those recordings, but anyway, I had taken to recording him as he would have these explosions and sometimes become physically abusive, and but emotionally, verbally abusive. And anyhow, I had taken to, and I had even told him, in some of them, I told him, I was like, okay, I'm recording this. And he's like, in the recording, he's like laughing at me. He's like, okay, who the fuck's going to hear that? Who's ever going to hear that shit? Ha ha ha, laughing at me and all this. And anyhow, so I had those. and so Michael said, you just go in there with that and with the truth, and you'll be victorious. And he said, the bulk of the learning has been done. You have done the bulk of the learning. And I know what he meant, and I'm not going to go into explaining that right now, but I know what he meant by that. And I know exactly what he meant. And he said, and now the time has come for you to start walking in a path of building a life of love and joy, surrounded by love and joy, so that you can be love and joy. The time has come. And he reminded me again about Joseph's story. If you haven't seen the first Angelic Visitation, my recounting, when Michael came, and he borrowed that human vessel to come talk to me, and during that conversation, he explained to me that that I'm a descendant of Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob in the Bible, in the tribes of Israel. And and if you don't know, I study all faiths and religions and ideological systems held by humanity, past and present. And that's actually something that he himself, Michael, asked me to do during the first visitation. In case you didn't see that, I want to clear that up. I clarify that. But yeah, here he was reminding me, he was telling me, like Joseph, that not only am I a descendant of Joseph, I am to be like Joseph this lifetime. And again, if you don't know Joseph's story, if you don't, if you're not, if you don't read the Bible and that's not your thing, or you believe something totally different, basically, in the story of Joseph, um, he is mistreated by a lot of his family. His brothers sell him into slavery, and all these things. He goes through a lot of trials and tribulations because a lot of his brothers are jealous of him, of all his the many gifts that he seems to have, and also the fact that he seems to have the gift of divination, of uh, yeah, of future sight and prophesying. Um, his brothers actually are very, very jealous of Joseph because he has these dreams about the future things that are going to come true, and they do, like, so they hate him, they do all these things to him, and then the last third of his life, everything's flipped around. The tables are turned, and basically Joseph becomes like the Pharaoh, like the king. I mean, he's not the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh pretty much trusts him wholeheartedly and gives him all this authority, like basically like he's just about like the Pharaoh, almost equal in rank in Egypt. And he lives out the rest of his days in abundance and fortune, surrounded by, oh, I'm getting goosebumps. Oh, oh, ooh. uh, uh, but that he lives out the last part of his life, the last third or so of his life, with this abundance and wielding his power in wisdom and good judgment and with love, because he also ends up helping his family and other things, the same family members who uh, you know did the things they did to him, whatever. Anyway, so but basically, Michael was telling me, was reminding me, he said, you've done the bulk of the learning. Now the time has come for you to step into this mission. And I was like, what mission? And he's like to build this life of love, full, just surrounded by joy and love, so you can be this love and joy and radiate it. And so, and that the promised heaven on earth will come in due time. And so essentially that's what he was telling me telepathically in conversation. And as soon as I understood, as soon as I accepted, as soon as I surrendered with a capital S in my heart, when I accessed my heart with a capital H, like I like to say, um, then he left. He dissipated and just left. It just disappeared. And but I mean, that deep, true, fierce love that I felt emanating from him remained with me. And I did. I ended up going to, like, I didn't even get changed. I think I was partly in pajamas. I didn't, like I said, I didn't have a lawyer, an attorney. I walked up into that courthouse in Allentown, Pennsylvania, the downtown courthouse, and in my jammies with no attorney and nobody at my side, and with a broken left, I limped in there, I should say, with a broken left foot, and I won. I spoke the truth. I said, hey, I have these recordings, and they, my ex-husband and his attorney folded, and they conferred, they talked, and decided to drop the whole thing and just agree to whatever. They didn't want to fight it, and they whatever the judge decided is what they would agree to go with. Because I had the recordings, okay, so essentially. But basically, the judge found for me and extended the PFA and all these other things, you know. But for this account, that's what happened. And that was the second time Archangel Michael visited me in the physical. Although I do, you know, since then, I've developed a relationship. I work very closely with angelic assistants and the angelic realms. It's a big part of my path and a very important, sacred part of my journey that I have very much awakened to at this point. And I do my best to do my best to work with the angelic assistance that is sent my way and the angelic realms that call to me and bring me messages from the divine, from Goddess, on my path as I walk it. And I feel very truly blessed to even be in this position, to be experiencing this flow, being in flow, capital F, and being connected to my heart with a capital H. So that's been my recounting of the last angelic visitation, and yes, a little bit of vulnerability in explaining to you how I even found myself in that sort of situation, which I will go into more videos about other things. There are all kinds of things that I'd like to share with you that I think, you know, I'm being asked to share with you about my experiences, not to bring, you know, like, oh my God, oh, look at this, not to be a victim. Fuck that. I'm not a victim. No, no, no. I was trapped in victimhood for a long time. I broke free from that. I'm not a victim. No, 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 no. If anything, I'm, and I'm not, I don't even see myself as a survivor of domestic violence and family trauma and childhood trauma. No, no. This has helped to sharpen and cultivate me into the being I now am. And so, yes, in that sense, that's how we transcend duality. And what, you know, you hear a lot of white light workers talking nowadays about true equanimity with all life has to offer. And well, at least that's how I call it. That's how I see it, because you are basically you know, you can have that perspective where you see that it all ultimately helped to create the you. There's no way. There's no way. This lifetime, I could even begin to be who I am now had I not had those trials and tribulations and challenges and opportunities. That's what they are, opportunities to learn and grow and expand. And then be, and why? So that then we as light workers can be in a position to then help and assist those after we've broken through those ceilings and those entrapments and negative programmings and cyclical cycles of abuse, you know, in our lives, and toxicity and other things. Some people dealing with, you know, all kinds of things, addictions. And now, think about it. We are that much better equipped to be able to help others who are still trapped in those paradigms and find it hard to see how to potentially break through. So, in that spirit, I shared with you my experience, and I will be talking more about all these things that I think are of great value about learning how to face your own, you know, instead of pushing it out, resistance, dealing with everything in life with resistance, pushing it away, not wanting to face your own darkness, but rather diving in through to it, through the heart of it, on through to the other side. to where you are now empowered by the experience and what you've learned from it, rather than trapped by the pain or victimhood of it. So that's where I'm at, and that's why I'd like to share and continue sharing about this and many other things. Oh, the age of Aquarius. Oh, baby, I can't wait, like I said, to get this Aquarian, the water bearer. You heard me say this before. I'm saying it again. The water bearer is going to be all too excited to be sharing about the Aquarian mindset and about how to slip and slide on through to the Aquarian age, okay? Because that's also a topic I'm very passionate about, as well as these topics about light workers breaking through their toxic environments that they were born into as part of the cultivation process, so that we can be the full polished gems we came to be. Okay, so with that, once again, thank you for joining, for listening to my recounting. So much love and light from my heart, with a capital H, to you, and see you next time.